Classic Spaces startup music. I love that shit.
Smooth.
Smooth. It is smooth. 100%. How you guys doing?
Good, Phoenix.
We're great, Phoenix. How about you?
Doing good. Doing good. Yeah. So just to kind of reset, get everybody who's anybody who might be listening, listen to the recording. Um, this is the Legend Level Up. Every Wednesday we'll talk about subjects that are focused around leveling up in our lives. Essentially, uh, identifying and cultivating the legend within. And part of it, like we'll have initially, sometimes I'll talk about some topics. If other people will hop on and talk about topics, anything from sales to, we've got some real estate people here, pilots, like there's some amazing people here. Um, but people can share their expertise, um, share their business prowess, and then we'll kind of shift into just chatting about like our lives, what we're doing, wins, um, opportunities, challenges, things like that. And just to catch everybody up, we were chatting and rolling in VC, and there's some amazing people. Like I think all of us have gotten to know each other a bit now, but I'm still kind of getting to know everybody. And Wingman was sharing his story, his journey of becoming a pilot. And Fuji was sharing which was telling us about how amazing a music artist he is and how much he wants to share all his music with
Wait,
everybody.
I don't know. Amazing. I'll be, you guys would be the true judge of that. Like I said, no fire emojis. It comes down. It's dead. It never sees the light of day again. Whether I'm making content or whether I put my music up and you guys listen to it and let me know, then we'll see. We'll see. It's weird. You know how they say like people are weird about their craft or like they're very
Yeah,
private about their craft if you create something or make or do. I
for
don't know.
sure.
It's just weird. But yeah, anyways, go on.
I hear that completely. I personally have done like podcasts and like basically kind of stuff like this where I just talk about subjects. Um, one I dropped like 200 that okay to be I know this is a recorded space. I'll just be completely straight up with you guys. I'd done like two or three podcasts before, and then one weekend I went to like my first rave with some cousins, and I'd kind of like forgot about my dreams, things like that. And we go to this rave for the first time. It's my first time taking acid, first time dropping Molly and smoking weed. There's some mushrooms floating around. I don't know who, there's a lot of people there. And I got to tell you guys, I had a fucking spiritual experience, like an awakening. And the thing that hit for me at that point was like, I think maybe for 3 4 years before that I saw this movie, this documentary called Zeitgeist, which is about how 9/11 and this and all this conspiracy stuff. But there's like a later one where the guy says all the things that's fucked up with the world, and then he brings on somebody else who's like, hey, we can actually solve this by designing cities of the future. It's called the Venus Project. So it always stuck in my mind, and there it like hit me. It's like, and this kind of ties into the topic today around manifestation, but it hit me at that time. It's like I've got this vision in my head of these cities. It like struck a chord with me in a way that even my friends who've seen that documentary or showed it to me, they're just like, yeah, that's cool, whatever. But for some reason, I thought it was possible, and it hit me when I was fucking tripping balls around 30,000 people at the Gorge in Seattle, outside of Seattle. I'm sitting there like, fucking hell, like there's a reason that it's stuck in my mind, and it's definitely possible. And I just realized like, okay, I can build like a prototype of the city at like a rave, and you've got now 30,000 people who see and experience something firsthand. And once the mind is like bent by an idea, it never returns to its previous shape. And so like I was just turning ball, and then a week later I just couldn't get these thoughts out of my mind. And I was at this other conference and driving back from Portland to Seattle, and I'm just like, fuck, I really got to share this stuff. And so I started recording, and I recorded like 7 different audio clips on my phone, and it just kept going. Like over the next day, I recorded, I think, 23 or 24, and it was just focused on creating and getting it out there. I wasn't even publishing, and it's like, holy shit, I gotta put this out. It's like it's kind of eating away at me. So that was like kind of drug fueled, but but so that was like a very unique time where I was just like it was more focused on the art and getting it out. And then, but to your point, that was big fucking tangent. But to your point, like I kind of create YouTube videos and I'm a little bit protective of it. So I get that 100%. Um, at the same time, I will say this, Fuji, for you. I'm saying this for myself, for everybody here. I don't know if you guys have heard of Seth Godin. He's like a big time marketer, and he's written a blog post every single day since um, what was it? He- It was since 1992. So he's written like 5 or 6 thousand blog posts, um, and he never missed a day. And one of his biggest things, he's like, for anybody who's a creative, um, like you just have to have a train where you just push out whatever your art is on a regular basis, regardless whether it's good, bad, whatever. But yeah, it was a kind of big intro. But Fuji would love to hear the music, dude. Eventually.
All right, man. We'll see. We'll see. We'll sleep on it.
Okay. Okay. And I won't push too hard, but you know where I stand.
All right. I appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you, dude. Um and appreciate you guys being here. By the way, if there's any like feedback, questions, anything you guys want me to focus on, not focus on, let me know. I want it to be like ideally open discussion type. Um and I can also just keep rolling too. So Um, any thoughts on it so far? Otherwise, I can just get rolling with talking about manifestation. Cool. Okay. Um, sweet. So, uh, I don't know where you guys are. A few of us talked about it in VC. We were talking about, obviously different people's paths. Um, were, some people like wingman became a pilot, and then a few other people got into real estate and had like a more windy path. Um, and part of my reason, like I was curious because I'm always curious about how people end up where they end up and like what that path looks like. I'm personally a huge, huge believer in manifestation. I'm a huge believer, and I'll just kind of define that a little bit. To me, manifestation is essentially seeing something in our mind's eye, accepting that as a reality, and like that becoming real in our lives in one way or another, right? And manifestation, when I think about it in that sense, um, it is like it's kind of scary on one hand because essentially what it says is that we are captains of our ship. We're captains of our lives, and we how we think truly dictates the kind of life that we have. Um, and I say this. I'm going to talk like this is going to go all over the place, because I'm going to bring up different concepts as they come up. Like I personally believe in God. Consider myself a God-fearing person. I'm not Christian myself, but I've got a Bible. I've read the Bible, not fully, but I go to church with Christians. To me, anybody who's like, believer in God, it's like, okay, we can, um, remember God together and live in accordance with certain values. But I say that because manifestation, it's very self-focused, and it's self-focused in the sense of like it's a very kind of western type of idea of like, this is my dream, this is my passion, my desire, I'm gonna make it happen, me, which when you think about that, it's like, okay, where's God in that picture? And my personal concept of God is, I think even the name God comes with a lot of different, and some people might agree with this, some people might not, but um, my concept of God is the eternal force, the eternal energy. It's no different, than every atom, every molecule, people, life, the universe, stars, everything. Like it's the creator is the creation, and in that sense, I think people who might consider themselves atheistic can, maybe lean on the universe or nature, just evolution or life as a process. But I say this because if the creator is within the creation, to me, I personally believe that all of us hold a piece of the creation within us, right? Within our hearts. And to me, true praise of God is, yes, it's in churches, yes, it's in temples where people are honoring, praising, singing hymns. I think it's also, on a stage when there's a DJ who's spinning a sick track and there's, tens of thousands of people just cheering, dancing, having an amazing time. To me, that's an expression of the divine. Obviously, you can distort it. If you think about like some of the crazy shit out there, like rap and sex and this and that. But um, I say that because thinking about manifestation from that lens, it's like, okay, we are really celebrating the divine by quieting our mind, quieting those like what society has laid on top of us, and listening truly to what's within our hearts. Um, because whether God or even nature, you think about life, like, you think about a tree. What's a good tree? A good tree is a tree that grows very tall, that, expands, has leaves, lives for hundreds of years, thousands of years, has a lot of acorns, provides life for other animals. In that sense, like, what is a good human? A good human to me is somebody who recognizes their divine imprint, and lets that flourish, lets that come out, as a source of light, as a source of energy and life for everyone around them. And so, in that sense, when somebody is truly manifesting, it's like they're allowing themselves to quiet all the bullshit, because there's a lot of bullshit in our heads about what's possible, what's not possible, and are tapping into what we truly desire. Now, I say all this because it can be. I think it takes a lot of courage to truly tap into our dreams and to follow them. And that's one of the reasons that I fucking love Legend, because the whole premise of our community, of this community, is like, we're a collection of people who want to do that, who do that, right? Like, we follow our dreams, we decide what we want to achieve, and we go and we fucking achieve it. And we kind of, we shine for other people, showing them the way as well. But and it's hard to find communities like that. But to me, that's what manifestation is. It's tapping into what we truly want. And when I say that it takes a lot of courage, I say that because, like, this world is, there's so much. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir. There's so much fucking bullshit in this world. Like, there's a quote from Kanye when he's talking about how when a kid hops up on a table, like, all of a sudden parents, and he's just playing Superman, he's like free, he's in his imagination, he wants to act out something, wants to feel something, and instantly the parents, the adults in that situation, they're like, no, 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 that's a coffee table, you can't get up on there, that's not for playing on, that's for coffee, this and that. And instantly in that moment, and from that moment on, and this happens to all of us, we are socialized to these norms, whether they're true or not. They just get piled on, piled on, piled on. And we see this kind of come out in our lives in the sense of, like, feeling, we talked about this a little bit early, feeling hesitation to share something that might be a little bit vulnerable, or sharing, our art or our creation. And my personal belief is it's just the, on the back of complete bullshit. So, it does take courage, because in following your dreams, you might take a path, in following something that calls to you, you might take a path that on the short term separates you from your family, from your friends, from uh, even, people that you've loved, known for your whole life, sometimes partners, and it can lead you down a path that might be a little bit more, I wouldn't say isolated, but, more self-defined, and that's not so clear. It's not so clear what the next thing looks like. So, on one hand, it takes courage. On the other hand, I think for real manifesting, I think it takes some level of quieting down the bullshit. And one of the main like, I've listened to Tony Robbins and stuff like that. Um, but one of the ways that I really started to tap into manifestation and kind of real goal setting and like on the esoteric basis was when I first went to Dan Pena. And um, one of the things that Dan does during a seminar, we talked about it a little bit on other spaces, but you know, it's like 7 days, 8 days. You travel to Ireland. He's got a big castle. You live in the castle, and he really shapes the whole experience to where you're kind of feels like stepping into a different world. Like it's a fucking, it literally is a castle. There's grounds. Everybody's spending time on the grounds. You know, there's all these different bedrooms, bathrooms. Like it's fucking a legit castle, and there's these supercars in the front, parked out in the front, and there's staff. There's staff that's waiting on you. You're getting 3-course meals at every meal. Everyone is dressed. You're required to wear a suit and tie for every occasion. So it forces you to like really in a big way step out of your norm, step out of, and that kind of comes back to like stepping out of the bullshit, stepping out of the bullshit of people's expectations and you know society's rules, things like that. And you step out of that, you step into this other world. It's shaking up your routine. Now you're thinking differently. And then he spends over those 7 days, and before you go, you fill out like 14, 15 pages of background. What kind of businesses you did, what you did in your life that was high performing, what do your parents do, what challenges do you have, this and that. Like, so he gets a full psychological profile. And the first 2 days, all he does is he fucking breaks everybody down. And he has all this data on everybody. He's been doing this for like 20, 25 years. And he's just sitting there like breaking everybody down with, and he adjusts his slides to be specific to what, you know, that group needs. But he's just cutting everybody down and telling everybody like, you know, your self-esteem is shit. Your dreams are shit. You've been living on autopilot. You don't know what the fuck you want. Your parents are worthless. You know, like he's pretty hard, but he does it because he cares. And but he really, I say this because what the process of what he's doing, he's literally breaking down the societal assumptions, that kind of conditioning that's built up in our minds over our lives. Then by the third, and I think by the third day, that's when we start ideating like what we really want. And so the process, like this is a very tangible process. I'll just give the process here about, you know, his process. I'll talk about a few other processes, but you know, in his case, you just write down anything you could ever want. And you might have heard this, you know, similar thing from like Zig Ziglar or Tony Robbins, but you just take out a piece of paper and you write down every single thing you could want. Anything that ever comes to mind, whether little or small, you're just brainstorming, getting it all down. And it's important to write down everything, even the stupid shit, even the shit that you don't think is possible. Like for me, it's like, okay, you know, I want this kind of car. And it was a kind of a like a pivotal moment for me because I grew up in a Sikh Punjabi household. A few of us talked about like foreign parents and immigrant parents, how they hardcore. It's like education. You know, this is the path. You're doing this. I don't give a shit. Um, and so for me, there was a lot of I grew up with learning to doubt a lot of my intuition, my own thoughts, ideas, and decision making because it wasn't didn't fit in with the norm. But this was the first time that I realized I could actually desire things. I could desire things that, before I might have thought like, oh, that's not, a good expression of humility. That's not like, a good thing to want. But I was just like, okay, let me just fucking write it all. I want a big ass mansion. I want multiple mansions. I want, condos all over the world that I can Airbnb and just go stay in. And I was just listing all this stuff down. I had like 3 or 4 pages, and then but the big thing is like it even though you're cutting down the conditioning by writing everything down, your brain then starts to think about like, you start digging as you find yourself struggling to write down more ideas. One idea triggers another, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I remember I actually really liked the idea of jumping out of a plane when I was a kid, and like certain things start coming back, right? And so you list all this down, and yeah, I'll just give the process real quick in full. Um, After you list everything down, essentially you cut out all the things that you don't really want. And my measurement, coming back to like listening to ourselves, my measurement for cutting things back was I would try to pay attention to my emotional internal reaction when I would look at something. So, like for me, having a big business, solving a big global problem, solving a big problem on a global scale, that just excites me versus, having a particular car like Rolls Royce, cool, yeah, whatever. Aston Martin, yeah, let's fucking take an Aston Martin. Ferrari, yeah, I'll take a Ferrari. Like, but you start to feel different things. Mansion, cool, maybe one or two, but you feel things out and let that be the guide to cut down to like the top 10. And then from there, I would even cut it down more to like the top 5, top 7. And then so let's say you've got your top 7 then from using that and obviously it can be a little bit challenging to pick one over the other. What I find helpful in those situations, just there's some things you're sure you don't want, so you just cross all that shit off. The easy ones, and then as you get to the tough ones, you can then start to make decisions. But let's say you're left with 5 or 7 goals. Then from there, you one and by the way, the preface to all this, and this is Dan Pena saying, he's like, go fucking way higher than you ever think you could. Like, I want to be earning 5 million a month, right? Or I want to build a business that's worth, multiple. I think at that point, this business size from a nursing home roll up was like $216 billion worth of revenue or some shit like that. He's like, just go fucking. You got to go like bigger than you could ever imagine, and because like coming right back to societal, what do you call conditioning, like people it's crazy, it's so crazy when you start like picking it apart. It's crazy how much we all have ourselves in a trance and kind of, and you can check out Marcel's content. He's a hypnotist. He talks a lot about the media, and I think we talked a little bit about COVID earlier. Like there's so many ways that a lot of organizations, government, people around us, we just keep ourselves in a trance, and sometimes we are so bought into it that we vilify people who step out because it threatens our illusion of reality. It's crazy. We can talk about some of that stuff on another one. But so you end up with the first 5 to 7. I mean your top 5 to 7, and then from there, you for each one you write down a very very detailed scene from that like goal being realized. And it's like if you're, let's say, have a big business, and the scene is like you're walking into your front offices, and you get as detailed as you can. You use all of your senses to engage all the senses in your body, and this becomes your affirmation. And let me see, I will, while I'm talking, I'll pull up some old school ones that I had just to kind of read one off. um, but from there, like you affirmations old. Yeah, we'll see if I can find out. Yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. So essentially, you list, like, so you're coming into this office. You tell you like, okay, I'm walking into the front doors of my main office, the headquarters. My dress shoes, click on the marble floors. I walk up to the front desk with beautiful, white and black marble. The gorgeous receptionist, blonde, greets me with a huge smile, and I, chat with her a little bit. She's giggling, laughing, and I go into the elevators, hop up to the 30th floor, to the main office, and you paint this very very vivid picture. And those, as you do that for these 5 to 7, those become your affirmations that then you read to yourself every day, morning and night. And one of the things that's so powerful about Dan Pena's approach is, like, obviously the emotional connection, like it engages all of your senses, um, but more than that, it also, like the concept, when you think about being grateful and like happiness, there's studies by Harvard about, like, at the end of the day, our brains are focusing mechanisms. Like we don't see everything, we only see what we're tuned in to see. And in that sense, like that's one of the reasons that listing what we're grateful for is such a powerful exercise, because it literally trains our brain to shift its focus, to have a different lens, to focus on abundance, on things that we are grateful for in our lives, and which literally tangibly, this is, experiments have been done on this, it tangibly increases our happiness. And then this exercise, Dan Pena's approach, focuses in the same way. Like you say this again and again and again, morning and night, and your brain, even if you don't believe it consciously, it seeps into your subconscious, and your brain starts turning on to ways that you can make that happen, and especially for dreaming about big opportunities. It just turns your brain on more and more to see those opportunities because they're there. Those opportunities are there. It's just we're not tapping in. We talked about a little bit about this, like vibration tapping in, the other time last week, but um, it is extremely powerful method to do that. So I did this, and just from personal experience. Let me see. I'm just trying to see one that, yeah, it's probably older. Okay, live and win in the jungle with these. Every word I utter, just trying. Okay, this is some other shit. Anyways, I did one for senior living communities, and for 2 years I was reaching out to the board of directors. And you guys, I've told this story a few times, but in this context, like I just kept saying to myself, like I had this vision in my mind of senior, like a senior living network, global network, 562 homes. One other thing I would do with these affirmations is I would get very specific numbers. So rather than, oh, we have 500 facilities across the world, I said 562, because when you have a specific number like that, it's like way more vivid in your mind. So, you think about like a money, certain dollar amount that you want to earn, rather than 7,200,368 no, $368,253 per month, right? Like that becomes very specific, and really helps with the visualization aspect. But I had this in my mind. Yeah. Oh, okay. It wasn't, sorry, billion. I was doing trillions. My heart is elated. Our company just surpassed $1.29 trillion market cap. Transportation networks, vertical farming. This is crazy. I'm a little bit crazy. Vertical farming, advanced technological wonders spread like normal homes across our network of cities. As we developed our profits to demolish so many industry records. As the New York Stock Exchange bell rings, I walk through the floor. I feel my heart, my very spirit elevate and expand. It's so fluid, so normal, so much fucking fun. And then pulling out my laptop, I run my hand over the shift sticker with the Dell logo underneath. So I kind of connected it to something that was current or present that I had in my reach. But I was doing the nursing home, affirmations, and I'm sitting there reaching out to people who had built $1 million businesses, $1 billion businesses. I'm telling them this vision. Obviously, in the beginning, I didn't believe it that much myself. I had a lot of internal shit to work through, but as I started to believe in it more and more, as the year and then the next year went on, it's like I would talk to people in huge law firms. I would talk to people who were CEOs, built these huge businesses, people who kind of led countries in their response to COVID, like big people, very well respected people. And I would just, like, it was normal for me. It just started to become normal. I was not, it was not an uncomfortable thing. And eventually, I think I mentioned this, like when I was doing that, I had a low credit score. I was doing some consulting jobs. I did not have, like, steady source of income, but I'm just like, fuck it, we're doing this. Um, and I just kept pushing. And yeah, there were times I was nervous, but like when we started to get into our first deal, because I went with one of my partners to this convention in Miami that was focused on this industry, and people are trading, like, talking about these facilities like trading cards. Like, oh yeah, I've got this facility. This one's about 22 million. We've got 112 beds. I'm just looking to sell this one. It was so nonchalant. It was a very different type of environment, um, but I felt comfortable. I felt very comfortable there because I had done this work in my mind. And even my partner, one of my partners, I stayed with him at his house. This guy was a very successful, very well connected guy. I really admire him. Also a dangerous guy, but I again felt very comfortable with him. It was as if I could talk to him as a peer, as a friend. And I remember at one point the three of us had gone to a restaurant, and we were just talking about the deal, and we are walking out. um, but even as we were walking in and as we were walking out of that restaurant, like something about the sign, like it said, King Burgers or some shit like that. It was like the craziest deja vu. It's like, holy shit, this, like, I envisioned this moment. And it wasn't that exact moment, but that kind of stage of life, if that makes sense. I envisioned a different specific moment, but it fit within, like, the kind of life that would cultivate that. And it was like becoming real. It just absolutely completely blew me away. So that's the Dan Pena method. I'll just talk about one other, and then I'll kind of cut because I just once it start rolling, once you pop, you just can't stop. So the other aspect of manifestation I want to talk about is not so defined as Dan Pena's, and I'm not as defined as I used to be, because part of me, like after I stepped out of that business, I had to think for myself, like, was I just doing this because I was, trying to appease Dan Pena? It's crazy when you start to actually think, like, what's really my idea and my desire and what's not. And so since then, for me personally now, the path is not so clear, but I can see ahead maybe 3 to 6 months, and I do want to get back into the senior living business. But what manifestation looks like now is a little bit different, in the sense of, like, walking around with conviction and a self-talk that says that whatever, like, I'm the fucking best. That nobody's greater than me, and this not to say that nobody else can be, but it's like, that's I think if we're truly legends and we walk around with that kind of self-confidence, like, you walk around with a full fucking cup that just spills over into everybody around you. And this was very tangible in the sense of, like, how, like, so I started a new sales thing. I was getting onboarded, and you kind of have to do this, like, just kind of, what do you call it, like a FAQ, to make sure that you're good to start making calls. First FAQ I did okay. I would talk with a lot of confidence, and then I started getting on calls yesterday. Out of the first 3 calls I made, the second call I made my first sale. Was not as big as I wanted, and I started to kind of get down on myself, like, oh, I probably could have, sold her for more. I know she needed it, and the next person, she definitely needed it, but I didn't sell, and she was like all excited. Like, I feel like I let her down, I let myself down, and so I started getting in my head. But then the second call I had today, I just, like, literally in the middle, first when I talked to her, I'm like, okay, she's like a perfect candidate. I know she's going to buy. I just started telling myself that. And then literally one part of the pitch, like, I was just remembering, like, dude, you know who the fuck you are. And literally the tone of my voice changed. And I could hear, like, I had to tell her about 3 different things. I told her the first thing, and she was like, yeah, that's cool. And then as I was telling the second thing, I just kind of, like, it clicked in my mind, like, dude, you're the fucking best. Like, this is, she needs it. You believe in this shit. You're the fucking best. And literally my tone of voice changed. That second and third time, her responses, she was fucking locked in. She was excited. It changed everything. So, in terms of that manifestation, what I found to be effective is to, and this kind of ties in with the concept of self-love that we talked about last week with Marcel, of literally loving and believing in yourself so much. And this is, we talked about this earlier, about, like, almost being naive about our goals and what we want to work towards, like almost being so childlike and so naive, where it's like any negative thought, any negative, like, word from somebody else, a weird look or failed sale, like, even if I'm doing, with this mindset, I have a sale, it doesn't go through, it's like, okay, it didn't go through, I know she needs it, I know I'm the right person to do it, I know this shit is going to happen, and it's just like, it's like, okay, it's inevitable. Oh, that one didn't happen. Who cares? It doesn't even register that it didn't happen. It was going to happen. Give me another 5 minutes, right? Put me on the phone again. It's going to happen now. You almost, like, delude yourself into your self confidence. But and I've been playing around with that personally, and I found it really, really effective. There's a channel on YouTube that talks about it. It's The Power of I Am. It's a bald white guy with sunglasses. He is of, almost everybody that I've come in contact with, that I've, invested into, his approach is like one of the most powerful that I've ever seen, because he really helps you tap into that internal self-talk to see where there's a mismatch of what we say we want and what we're really telling ourselves on the inside. So that's all I've got for now. I hope that was helpful, guys. I kind of just started rolling, but yeah, curious what you guys think. Any questions, thoughts, something come up for you?
That was great, Phoenix. Thanks for sharing, man. This is Wingman here. I can you hear me okay?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I couldn't help but thinking of while you were talking about the method of writing down like everything that you could ever want. I feel like I've actually done
Hmm.
that in my own life without even realizing it. Realizing that it was a method or something. And it was just I
Hmm.
figured I had to share it with you. since you were talking about it so much. Like when I first got into crypto, it was because a friend of mine basically made I watched him go from working like a tech sales job to being worth literally tens of millions of dollars in a matter of a few months. So I
Wow.
looked at crypto as like, holy shit. And this is like a really good friend of mine that I know in real life. So I'm like, wait, this is possible. So I go, so I'm like, teach me everything you know, basically. And then, so without getting into the nitty gritty of all that, it came back to what it allowed to happen was the conversations that I started having with my wife, basically. And we started having like these fun conversations. It's kind of like, oh, if we won the lottery, we would do this or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it felt a lot more real because I'm like, well, I saw it happen once. And so it was just like,
Mm-hmm.
man, if crypto took off, we would do this. We would travel to this place or we would buy this house or whatever it was. And
Mm-hmm.
so we started having this conversation a lot. And then so I wrote down like we would like write down our dream house. Like if we could have every single anything we could ever imagine in our dream house, movie theater, game room, back like everything you could possibly think of, we would like write it out. And the
Mm-hmm.
cool part for me going through that process was I actually looked at that. I would look at that list and I'd be like, like we could do some of this stuff now. And
Yeah.
it's like, wait, what? And instead of having this like intangible thing, like, oh, I wish we could do this, I wish we could travel here, we could do that. It's like, actually, we can do this. Like this stuff we can do now.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really enlightening. And then a lot of it was too like, well, what about like what's the why? Like we wanted to like redo our entire backyard or whatever. And it was gonna cost a certain amount of money, it was gonna take this amount of time and blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, why do we
Mm-hmm.
necessarily want this? And so we take it a step further and be like, well, so we can host people while the kids are little. It's easier to have them over in the backyard. And I'm like, okay, so we take it a step further. Like, why do we want that? And blah, blah, blah. And we realized, well, actually, if we dug up the yard, even if money was no object, we'd have to dig up the yard. We'd be without a yard for an entire summer while the kids are little. And
Mm.
it's like, oh, actually, that's not something that we want because yeah, those things would be nice, but why we want those things we wouldn't even get them actually, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, that's so good. Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
So it was just kind of an interesting thought experiment that I didn't even realize I was doing, but it just kind of came naturally and I felt it tied in with what you were saying.
Dude, that's fucking huge. And I think you answered the question for me, to be honest, about like deciding what I really want. I mean, that like there's that first step of kind of writing what you want. And then the second, I love that you put that in. I think that's extremely powerful because it forces us to really examine and dig deeper and um, really make sure that it's our goal rather than just something we're doing because we think we should or think it would be good for this or that.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, I appreciate you sharing that. And what you said about it, like something else that stuck out that you said was um, that it felt real. That it felt real because you saw it happen. And like I think with this stuff, like even if we don't believe it's true, I think this stuff still impacts us. But that's so powerful when you believe it's real. Like, I mean, what was your experience? Like, what did that feel like, knowing that this is possible compared to other times?
It was great. I mean, because like I said, the conversation, it's easy to describe this conversation as like, oh, if you won the lottery, what would you buy? But it's
Yeah.
like people have those conversations at the dinner table or at the bar and nothing ever comes of it. But with
Mm-hmm.
this, by knowing that it was real, it made you actually think, oh, what do I really want?
Mm-hmm.
And that was great too. I mean, to tie it all back into legend, it made me to go for my whole crypto journey. It's kind of like if I'm sitting there trading shit coins on Pump Fund or whatever, and I make $100 or $1,000, I have this in my mind where I'm like, is this really worth it? Is this worth my time? Like I just spent half a
Yeah.
day on this. That's not what I'm jonesing for here. What I'm jonesing
Yeah.
for is getting that level of money to get that stuff that's on my list. You know, the stuff I
Mm-hmm.
want to buy, the stuff that you talk about, that you've written down, having the home in multiple locations, having the, you know, being able to travel wherever you want, whenever you want. Like I can manage a version of that now, but I'm on this
Mm-hmm.
journey to really level up and get that legend status is what we're talking about here. And that's why I think that's why I personally am so pumped to run legend up as high as we possibly can, because
Yeah.
that's the goal. It's not
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, dude. So well said. And you know, a few other things jumped out to me as you were talking about that. Like you mentioned, you know, and it's so true. Like how often do we have these kinds of conversations in a bar, at dinner, something like that? Oh, Fish, what up, dog? Dude, Fish, get the fuck up on stage. Fish is a homie from Boomer. This guy, he's talk about a good guy. He's a good guy. He's a good guy. You'll hear him. He's a
What's
little
up,
crazy, but
Fish? Welcome.
yeah, welcome to Legend Fish. You found where I've been slutting about, fucking kicking it with the boys. Yeah, definitely. It's good to see you, Fish. So yeah, that was yeah, Wingman. Yeah, dude. Yeah, what you said about like people in the bar, people at like at dinner and just kind of saying they want something and not really believing in it. I think what happens for the brain is it engages differently, right? Like we have that conversation, disappears, never think about it again. Versus this time you're like, this is possible. My homie just did this. And you know, because there's that one like with Dan Pena's method, you're reading it again and again. You wouldn't read something again and again if it wasn't something that you wanted and that you believed, even if it was like a 0.001%, like you believe enough to keep repeating it, and so it like signals to the brain that hey, this is important. um and to your point, when you believed it was possible, to me, I think it's like okay, it really stands out. And the other piece that stuck out is like you're playing around on pump fund making, you know, a few 100,000. It's like because you believe that was possible, because you had that clarity of the vision of what you wanted, like it was a very very easy litmus test of like this is not worth my time to be spending dicking around here. Is not going to get me to where I'm going. Like you said, to the legendary status. Um, and it was something Novel Ravikant. I think I mentioned this before. He said too in his book when he was kind of getting up. He um, like realized he was like, I want to make. You know, he kind of worked backwards to how much he wants to earn, and it came down to about 5,000 per hour. And because he had that number, even though he wasn't earning that, at the very least, it helped him filter out anything that did not come close to helping him achieve that. So if he's wasting his time folding his laundry, for instance, um, so I think that's one of the most powerful things of having a clear vision is giving us that filter.
I think it's important too what you bring up, like the effect that it actually has on the brain. I think
Yeah.
I think I've read a few things about this, and like for one thing, like when people buy a lottery ticket for the following week, they make more impulsive money decisions, regardless of whether they
Oh,
won anything or not. It
yeah.
and then it comes back to like goal setting. I'm really big on goal setting, but I think it's important for people to, well, I've also read that when someone tells someone what their goal is, their
Mm-hmm.
brain sends like a little happy trigger that
Mm-hmm.
um is comparable to like actually achieving the goal. So your brain gets a little reward for telling the person your goal, but you didn't actually get any closer to it, you know, but your
Mm-hmm.
brain kind of tricks you into thinking that you're closer to it. Um and so it goes back to like making those wishful things where it's like, oh, it'd be great to own this or do that. Well, your brain just
I
got a little
see.
trigger, like this little reward for saying that, and then now you can go back to your comfortable life or whatever. But
I don't
that's
know.
why I think it's important for you. Sorry, was someone trying to jump in?
No, I'm sorry, I was cutting you off. That reminds me of that rap song, like real G's move in silence like lasagna, right?
Oh, I
Kind of
love that
thing.
line.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
And that's absolutely right what you're saying. It's like people don't like. It's like everywhere. Every successful person's always kind of worked under the radar, and then kind of boom.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think it ties in and to what Phoenix was saying about having those affirmations and reading them to yourself to make it seem like a real thing and not just giving your brain that cheap reward.
Hmm. Yeah, and to your point about like whether we believe it's real or not, when we don't, it's like we're kind of just giving ourselves cheap dopamine by talking bullshit about what we want versus like when you sat down with your wife, it's like, okay, you're thinking about it differently, and it's like not just we want this, but how do we get this? Oh fuck, we can actually do some of this now. Um, which is say, I love that. Yeah, that's really cool story. And it's very tangible, I think, and that's the other thing, like exactly what we're talking about. Without writing it down, who knows if that would have come up in another way of like, hey, we're going to do this now, right? But when you wrote it down, it's like, okay, not only do we want this, we can do it now. Cool, we're going to do it. And it not only legitimizes and gets you more of what you want, but then also opens up the door for the other things that may not be attainable right this second, but are now all of a sudden a lot closer, feel a lot closer.
Yeah, and it did make it a lot easier to, let me think how to word this, like to not feel bad for the stuff that we didn't have necessarily,
Yeah.
because there was no, like when you just want stuff and there's no structure to it, you're like, oh, I wish I had that or I wish I had this, but it's like, no, 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 like we've written this down, we can have that. Or it's like we could have that if we wanted, but the real goal is over here, it's written higher on the
Yeah.
list. And once we know that and it was in some sort of structure, now we don't feel bad that we're not getting the one thing. And not only that, now you're not wasting energy, brain capacity, anything on that. You can just focus so much better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said, dude. That's absolutely well said.
uh, when you were talking about imagining all those things, I used to read a lot of Nietzsche back in the day, and I actually went to Switzerland where he kind of wrote all his stuff. And the thing that always reminded me of him was this: he was famous for a lot of stuff, but the thing that stuck to me was this theory of the eternal return of the same, right? The eternal return of the same. And that's kind of what you were talking about earlier about like always being like routine based, and kind of it's almost like you're
Mm,
brainwashed, or like you're not like it's like days pass and you don't even notice that days have passed because your routine is always the same. And then I was imagining what you were saying in terms of like, now that I'm older, I know more of what I want. And if and it seems that like we can't get away from this eternal return of the same. I'd like for my eternal return of the same to be something that I actually want to do, and not so much just get up, go to work, make sure everything is set for everything. I like to spend time more in places I want to be, doing things I want to do. And that's why Legend was such a big draw to me, and that's why I feel like it still is, and it will be, because I think we can keep pushing it and developing it into something much bigger, whatever it ends up being. But that's the whole
hmm.
time you kept talking about it. That's all I was thinking about was how can I, and today was like a beautiful day for it. Like the same, like I was at home and I'm like, holy shit, it's already this late. Like, what did I even do today? I don't even remember what I did today, because you get in this zone, especially if the weather's shitty or whatever. And it was just interesting what you were talking about and how it connected to me and what I was thinking.
Mm.
Molly,
And
that's,
the eternal. Oh, go
oh,
ahead.
sorry, that's, I just love everything you just said, Molly. That's really cool. I think about that a lot too. I've never heard it in those words. And I'm gonna keep that, log that, because that's a really good one. And I was just talking to Phoenix and VC before we jumped onto Xbase and kind of tell him my path to my career. And like one of the things I said that I say a lot is like, I had to work extremely hard, way harder than I ever thought way harder than I ever imagined in order to live an easy life. And now I'm just at another stage where I want to level up, put the work in, and like you were saying, return to the same, making sure that same is something where you want to be.
Yeah, for sure. 100%. And just like what you said in terms of working really hard for something, it's like there are definitely times in my life that are very distinct, very like lucid almost, and almost where I knew I had to do something and it was not easy, and I managed to do it somehow. Right? Like my back was against the wall. It was like, and I told myself like, all right, I literally would tell I spoke out loud to myself, okay, you have to fucking do this now. There's no other option here. Like you can't redo it or you can't do it tomorrow. You have to do it. And I can think of three, four huge instances in my life where it happened. And because of my focus and it was just kind of zoned in, I knew, and it happened. And the last one was right around COVID, right before COVID. And I remember like yesterday, I was sitting there and I was like, oh my God, I have to do this. And it was like a big, like 4 month long project, and there was no pushing it back. And it was like if you were a betting man, you would have bet against me. The smart bet was all against me, but like I fucking told myself this has to be done, and it got done, and it was great, and it worked out. So it was just these things like where like when you're not lying to yourself, and when you really are manifesting, it's like it's almost like something takes over you, your full self takes over everything, and your full focus. And it's not like, oh yeah, we're gonna do this, it's like, hey, no bullshit, like you have to do it. And it happened to me as well when me and Dude Pizza were talking about Legend, and it was right after all the shit that happened, and it was kind of very similar. And it was a similar thing where it was like, no, this has to be done, and maybe we don't know what it is or what we're gonna do, but we're gonna fucking do it. There's nothing else. There's nothing else. Like you have to be consumed by it, and the sole focus was on it. So I don't know if that means anything, but that's how it's been for me in terms of manifestation and the stuff you've been talking about.
Dude, that means a lot. I'm so glad you said that because that's fucking powerful, and it made me think like there's probably so many. I really, I just had to say this. I think next week, future weeks, I think it would be amazing, for some of the guys here to step up and lead the discussion because, dude, that is so powerful. So, Molly, you would just tell yourself like you have to do this, and it would just kind of like get your
It,
mind.
it
Yeah,
was it was it was like a point of no return. Like whether it
yeah,
was a point of
wow,
no return, and it was no more fucking around. This needs to be done. You had a couple swings at it, and it hasn't worked out. And if you don't fucking do it now, you're fucked. Like you are
yeah,
fucked. You have it's like everything you've put. I put time into this project, and it was kind of like the last big hurdle. It was the biggest hurdle, and there were a ton of obstacles, outside factors that were kind of standing in the way, stuff that I couldn't control, and I was using that as an excuse to not
mm,
complete, right? And then it was to the point I was sitting there, and I'm just like, I remember it. I was at work, and I was standing there with my secretary, and she's just kind of like, oh, so whatever, being what a good secretary does, trying to be supportive and stuff. And then
mm-hmm,
I'm just like, I'm gonna fucking do this. And I'm like, I was talking to myself, but I didn't even realize she was there. And I'm like, this is, I have to do this. This is it. I'm gonna do this. And she's like, oh yeah, I believe it. I'm like, oh, thanks. I didn't realize she was even there.
mm,
I was almost like in a different state where I was fully convinced that that I was gonna do it, and I had to do it, and I ended up doing it. And again, it was like against, like, there was no way like anybody would have bet money on me doing it in the situation that I was currently in. So that kind of reminds you of Legend and what happened with us with this shit. And I really think like I get those same feels from it.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
Molly hit something that really hit home for me. If I could jump in here for a second,
Please, of course. Yeah.
and it's something that I'm always telling my son, because I believe in manifesting. I write everything down. Um, I'm a little older than a few of you guys, I think, and I've been doing it for years, and it's actually worked out for me. It's obviously not easy all the time, but the one thing that Molly brought up that I'm constantly telling myself, and I'm telling my son and my daughters, it's like, it's not, never break your word. Look, we know that, right? But more importantly, don't ever break your word to yourself, ever. Like, if you say you're going to do something, or if you say you're never going to do something, you need to stick to your guns, because once you break that promise to yourself, it's a slippery slope and it's game over. So it's like, for me personally, like, every time I would say, all right, I need to do this, this has to get done, something that Molly just said, it's like, if I tell myself I'm going to do it, I have to do it. There is no turning back. So it's like, in my opinion, it's so important to keep your word to yourself. It's obviously important to keep your word to others, but to yourself, it's a non-negotiable.
People, that
Well
reminds
said.
me of something. Maybe you've heard. Maybe you've heard this before. I've read about it a little bit, but a performative utterance. It's when, like, if someone says words and it actually changes reality, right? So, like, if a little kid points his finger at you and says, "Bang, you're under arrest," he's just playing around. But if a police officer says, "You're under arrest," well, now you're under arrest.
Right.
Or if a priest in a church says, "I now pronounce you husband and wife," these people are now married, right?
Wow.
So, one of the things to think about that internally is to make the things that you say, not only to others, but like P. Billa was saying, the things you say to yourself, make them performative utterances. So, where if you say it, that thing is now true in the world, and it is, you can consider it done.
Done, for sure. I think
Fuck
it's
yeah.
I think it's Tony Robbins that says, well, I'm gonna botch it, but he says something like, you have to turn your wants into your standards, or something like that. Like, it's
Yeah.
not, you don't have to sort of want it. It's like, if you want it, it has to be part of your life. Like, one of the things, and just to get into like my personal life, that I would always write down before, as soon as I got married, before I had kids, and it was like, I want to be able to take my kids to school in the morning if I want to. And that was like at the top of my list. And I do that. And I mean, to even take it way back when I was a kid, to dox myself a little bit. I live in a suburb where I grew up in the city of Chicago, and this suburb that I currently live in was like, you had to be rich to live in this neighborhood. And then I remember specifically, and I told my wife this, and she's like, "Are you serious? Like, that's so sad." But I'm like, I remember being a kid and saying that when I get old, when I grow up, I'm gonna have a house in this suburb. You know what I mean? And okay, like, yeah, I live here now, and it's fine and beautiful and stuff. But it's like, certain things, if you can just, and I think it was you, PHNX, you're like, if you could, you start writing shit down, and your mind starts bringing back other memories and other wants and desires. And it's like, oh shit, I forgot about that. Like, I forgot I even wanted that, or I tried doing that, 15 years
Yeah.
ago, you know? So I'm a firm believer in writing it down. I'm in real estate. You guys all know that. And I would always write down, like, I own, 12 houses. And then I would get 12 houses, and then I'd fucking sit down and say, okay, I own 50 units. And then it's like, boom. And it's like, okay, I own 100 units, and I make X amount of dollars a month, and I drive this type of car, and it's like boom, and it's like fuck, and it's like happening over and over and over and over again. But
Well,
it's very easy. Well, I'm just speaking for myself here. Getting married, growing and having kids, and then the business growing. It's like sometimes, like, it's been a long time since I've actually written anything down. I'm not gonna lie. And while you guys were speaking, I started writing shit down again.
fuck
You
yeah.
know, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I,
Dude, uh-huh.
I was just
Yeah.
gonna say, P. Bill, exactly what you said. It's the writing down stuff. When I was starting out, I was in education when I started, and I still kind of am. But I was in education. It was like I want to work in this area, and when I get there, I want to teach these classes. I want to coach these sports, and I want to run these clubs. Right? That was kind of that's what I wrote down for myself as well. And then little by little, oh, I'm teaching in this area. I am teaching these classes, right? And then once I filled all those things up, it was like, oh wow, I achieved everything. And then it was like, okay, now same thing, write them out, go higher. What are we achieving? So now,
Mm-hmm.
in that life, now it's like with Legend. What are we? What is my goal for Legend? I write down the stuff, right? It's like I want to be there every day for the community because it's something I believe in, and for the people that we're working with. I want to try to push myself to get on spaces, build an online profile, whatever. I couldn't agree with you more. It's so important to do these things for yourself and check in. I do it with my kids. They're younger, they're in elementary school, and we write down goals, whether it's sports, whether it's friends, whether it's girls, whether it's school, whatever. It's like, what are your goals? And you write them down. You write down the short term, the medium term, and the long term, because it helps you keep kind of keep positive and stay positive.
One
And
hundred
cut out the
percent.
bullshit, like Phoenix talked a lot about earlier.
Yeah.
It allows you to cut out all the bullshit because when you have a defined direction that you're going, you can realize it's easier to notice, like, hey, this isn't taking me to where I want to go, and it's easier to let that go.
And I think, Wingman, you mentioned it. You're like, the why is very important as well. Like, why did I want X amount of apartments? And then I would write down a list of,
Mm-hmm.
like, why do I need these? What am I going to do with the money, or with the equity, or with the extra time? Like, everything in detail. You know. So I think the why is just as important.
Mm-hmm. Guys, I'm taking fucking furious notes right now. uh, I and like I think it was Molly who said that, even about like writing down what the goal is for Legend, and all. It kind of hit me. I'm like, uh, okay, we open this space. We're talking about manifestation. I'm like, oh yeah, right. And I did not write down my goal for Legend. Like, we've talked about it, but I was just thinking to myself, like, I haven't written that down.
Yeah.
Um,
You
eh,
you're speaking and I'm thinking,
yeah.
and you took the words right out of my mouth. As soon as Molly said that, I'm like, what came to my mind when he said that wasn't
Uh huh.
wasn't a market cap. My mind automatically went to holders.
Yeah.
I'm like, we need
Yeah.
X amount of holders. Like, that's what
Yeah.
crossed my mind when he said that.
Yeah. Very. Yeah.
Like, in
Yep.
detail.
Holders. Yeah. For me, it was um, how being very specific about how people change when they interact with Legend. Like, what happens for them in their
Right?
life. Yeah. Yeah. Fuck. That's huge. And one other thing that really, really stuck out about what you guys said about performative utterance, to speak very frankly, that is something that I personally struggled with like keeping, promises to myself. Sometimes I'm really good with it, and that's what I'm fucking rolling, and I'm careful about it. But and part of the reason I say that is because, like, to keep your promises to yourself, if you're not used to it, or you let yourself slip, that can be a hard thing. But I think you guys said it well, when when you just hold that weight to your words, first off, you just stop promising things for yourself and you focus on only promising things that you know you'll keep. And then that increases the trust and then it can grow from there. But yeah, that's huge performance. I never heard of that performative utterance. By the way, Fuji, what's good, dude?
Nothing, man. You know, you touching base on kind of every. I mean, we could talk for hours, right, on everything, but
Yeah.
something that I struggled with a long time in my life, and I've had a lot of people point it out to me in my life, like, dude, certain people you hang with, you know, your circle is everything, your crew, like people around you, people really that you, and I would always give people benefit of the doubt, right? No, they're a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
No, they're this, or I'd put them before me. But I've had people tell me my whole life, like, dude, you need to start clipping these dudes out of your life. You don't need them, you know? And I'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
he's talking about, he's a hater, whatever. And I would always give benefit of that. Finally, like, I've ended like friendships of like 25 years where I've just cut these people off the last like year. Like, I no longer talk to these
Wow.
people. I no longer text them. I no longer call them. And not for just because, oh, they hurt my feelings. I actually sat down and thought, like, okay, every time something bad has happened to you in your life, or in my opinion, bad to me, or in some cases it was a lot worse than that, just stuff that I dealt with, you know, didn't tell anyone. I was like, wow, X, Y, and Z was there, or X, Y, and Z
Wow.
was the fucking reason, or X, Y, and Z, it originated from that person. It's like nothing good has come from that person in my life. Why am I giving him the benefit of the doubt? Oh, I've known him since I was a child. Oh, I'm being fucking soft. Oh, as a family friend, fucking our parents are friends. Fuck that. I've cut them off.
Yeah.
And for the first time, it feels fucking great. You know, and those people are wondering, well, what did I do to them? Well, the list is there. Now, am I being petty? No, but am I getting more ahead, cutting off all these people one by one? Absolutely. And I think one of the hardest things to do is cut off a friendship or a relationship. Now, I'm not saying if I don't see this person, you know, we're in the same circle of friends. If I see him, I'm like, hey, what's up? Yeah, long time, man. We haven't
Yeah.
talked. Sorry, I've been busy, whatever. It's not that I have hatred towards them, but they no longer need to be part of coming to family parties, being around me, just calling them and shooting the shit with, you know, people that are like minded. Yeah, let's get it. Let's run after it. Let's do it. No, these people are no longer in my life. They're gone.
It's a new
Yeah.
chapter, bro.
And it's very hard to do that, especially when you've known someone for that many years. But if you do it, man, you're just dead weight. You're just gonna fucking stay there. You're dead.
Yeah.
So
Dude, I'm so glad you brought that up because literally the people can make or break our whole fucking life at the end of the day. Like, and it seems easy to talk about, but like you said, when you sat down and thought about it, thought about the bad things that happen in your life and how there's just this consistency. Yeah, I know for myself, I've cut myself out of communities where, it's like, no, no, you should be here. But I'm like, when I really think about it, it's like there's nothing good coming from this.
what are you
And
gaining from it?
ironically,
What are you gaining in your life, or
yes,
not like not monetary necessarily or financial? Or what are you gaining? What are you learning? What are you bringing home? What are you going to be like? Hey, man,
yes,
that was great from that party. Hey, I learned from that guy. He was smart. Whatever the case is, you know.
yeah,
No, there's nothing to offer. And then
eh,
those people start to essentially wonder, like, or they're like, hey, you're a big shot, or hey, whatever. No, I no longer think about that.